Hello, everyone, and welcome. Today, we are diving headfirst into the stormy, gothic world of Emily Bronte's masterpiece, Wuthering Heights. We're going to start at the very beginning, exploring one of the most famously unwelcoming homes in all of literature, all through the eyes of one very, very confused new neighbor.
So, our story really kicks off with a question that just perfectly sets the stage for an incredible social train wreck. What happens when a guy who thinks he's a friendly, charming recluse moves in next door to a man who is the real, hostile, honest-to-goodness misanthropic deal? All right, so let's meet our narrator. His name is Mr. Lockwood, he's a gentleman from the city, and he's just rented a fancy manor called Thrushcross Grange. He's there for some peace and quiet, right? So, naturally, the very first thing he does is decide to go visit his landlord, a Mr. Heathcliff, at his very remote home, Wuthering Heights.
And right away, we see Lockwood's totally, wildly off-base first impression. He takes one look at this rugged, stormy landscape and his grim, solitary landlord and thinks to himself, this is perfect. We're going to be the best of friends. He just completely fails to read the room, or the person standing in it.
This really just lays out the massive gap between Lockwood's fantasy and the cold, hard reality of the situation. He's expecting a kindred spirit, a fellow loner. What he gets is a man who won't even look him in the eye, who mumbles an invitation to come in like it's a curse, and who responds to a friendly pat on his dog with a swift kick. Yeah, this is not exactly a warm welcome.
So what's going on here, really? Well, it's Lockwood's own vanity. Instead of seeing Heathcliff's rudeness for what it is, which is just pure unadulterated hostility, he projects his own personality onto him. He thinks, oh, I get it, this guy's just reserved, he hates showing his feelings, just like me. He could not be more wrong.
And then, believe it or not, things get even worse. Lockwood is left alone for a second, and he makes the huge mistake of making faces at the dogs. Suddenly, the mother dog lunges, and then half a dozen more dogs just pour out of the shadows, swarming him. As he's trying to fight them off with a fireplace poker, Heathcliff and his servant just take their sweet time coming to help. The whole chaotic scene is only broken up when a cook storms in, literally swinging a frying pan.
Now you'd think that would be enough to scare anyone off, right? But nope, not Lockwood. For some bizarre reason, he is absolutely determined to make friends. So the very next day, against all common sense, he walks 4 miles through a building snowstorm to visit Wuthering Heights again, and this time, it's even more of a disaster.
Lockwood walks in and finds a beautiful but very moody young woman. Trying to break the incredibly awkward silence, he makes his first truly terrible assumption. This must be the lady of the house, Mrs. Heathcliff. Heathcliff's response is just pure acid. He mocks Lockwood with this awful sneering smile and informs him that his wife has been dead for a long, long time. The atmosphere in the room, which was already freezing, somehow drops another 20 degrees. So, who in the world is this young woman? Okay, so trying to recover, Lockwood glances over at the other guy at the table, a rough-looking, unkempt young man. And then he makes his second massive social blunder, assuming this brutish-looking guy must be the young woman's husband. And yeah, that goes over about as well as you'd imagine. The young man, who we find out is named Hareton Earnshaw, is deeply offended. He clenches his fists and just spits a curse at Lockwood. So, not the husband either. At this point, Lockwood has successfully managed to tick off every single person in the room. As if the social train wreck wasn't bad enough, the weather has turned into a full-blown blizzard. You can't see a thing, the paths are completely gone, and of course, no one is willing to guide him home. So against everyone's wishes, especially his own, Lockwood is now trapped at Wuthering Heights for the night. So the housekeeper, Zillah, very reluctantly leads Lockwood upstairs. She warns him he has to be quiet because the master, Heathcliff, hates it when anyone sleeps in this one particular room. She puts him in this old, unused chamber that has a strange box-like bed inside and just leaves him there for the night.
So Lockwood is hiding inside this weird enclosed bed, and he notices names scratched all over the paint. And he sees one name repeated over and over again, but with 3 different last names: Catherine Earnshaw, Catherine Heathcliff, and Catherine Linton. He has just stumbled right into the very heart of this house's deepest mystery.
Eventually, he falls asleep and has this absolutely terrifying nightmare. In the dream, he hears a branch tapping against the window. He gets annoyed, breaks the glass to grab it, but instead of a branch, his hand is seized by a small, ice-cold hand reaching in from the darkness. Then a child's voice starts sobbing from the storm outside, begging to be let in. The voice says its name is Catherine Linton, and that it's been lost out on the moors for 20 years. Lockwood, in a state of pure terror, actually scrapes the ghost's little wrist against the broken glass until it lets go. The sheer horror of it all makes Lockwood cry out, a real waking scream. And this next part is so important. Heathcliff bursts into the room, but his reaction isn't anger. It's this deep, agonizing shock. The moment Lockwood mentions the name Catherine, Heathcliff is just overcome by this wave of violent, tormented emotion that's honestly terrifying to see.
A completely shaken Lockwood finally gets back to his rented house the next day, sick from the cold and the sheer terror of it all. But he can't get what he saw out of his head. He calls for his housekeeper, a woman named Mrs. Dean, because he is determined to get some answers about the twisted family living at Wuthering Heights.
Okay, let's untangle this very confusing web. Mrs. Dean explains the whole thing. That young woman, she is a Mrs. Heathcliff, but she's Heathcliff's daughter-in-law, and she's a widow. Her maiden name was Catherine Linton, and get this, she's the daughter of the family that used to own the very house Lockwood is renting. That rough young man, Harrington, he's her cousin. And to make it even weirder, her dead husband was also her cousin. And Heathcliff, he's the master of both properties, but he's an outsider, not related to any of them.
Well, now Lockwood is completely hooked. He has to know more. He asks Mrs. Dean to tell him the whole story of his strange landlord. And Mrs. Dean, who actually grew up at Wuthering Heights, starts her story right at the very beginning, with the mysterious arrival of Heathcliff himself.
So this is where it all began. One day, the old master, Mr. Earnshaw, comes back from a trip to Liverpool. But instead of the presents he promised his kids, he's brought home this starving, ragged little orphan boy he found on the streets. He names the boy Heathcliff, and just like that, this strange, silent child becomes a part of the family.
The two Earnshaw children, of course, react in completely opposite ways. The son, Hindley, absolutely hates Heathcliff from the moment he lays eyes on him, seeing him as an intruder. But the daughter, Catherine, after a little hesitation, forms this incredibly deep, wild, and inseparable bond with this strange new boy.
And really, from that first day, Heathcliff's presence just throws the whole family into chaos. Mr. Earnshaw starts to favor the quiet, stoic Heathcliff over his own son, which just fuels Hindley's anger and resentment. You can see how the seeds of all the tragedy to come, all the hatred, the revenge, the doomed love, they were all planted right here, in this moment.
And that leaves us with the central burning question of the entire novel. How did this happen? How does a foundling from the streets of Liverpool, this patient, abused, and incredibly resilient boy, transform into the cruel, wealthy, and tormented man who haunts Wuthering Heights and holds everyone's fate in his hands? Well, the answer is an epic story of passion, revenge, and obsession that we've only just begun to uncover.